also think it's like very summery. So it's got like good weather vibes. Wind-blown hair running on the forest floor. New love in the summer when the air was warm. You rolled in like a thunderstorm. In the summer when I was born. We danced in the falling of the autumn leaves. Together every season's a gift to receive. Real love, it changes 'cause it's always free to live and die like autumn leaves. Here in the silence, here in the still, I know you better than I ever will. Here in the silence, here in the still, it's always been you. It's always been you. And it always will. Laugh out in the middle of a raging war. Real love don't need fighting for. So we pretend but we don't keep score. Love's favorite joke is war. Our love so endless, our love so deep. All is surrendered, all is set free. Our love so endless, our love so deep. It's always been you. It's always been you. And I have loved you all my life, and now my hands are open. Oh, I have loved you all my life, and now my eyes are open. It's always been you. It's always been you. It's always been you. It's always been you. And it always will.
Oh, that was beautiful. That was like a prayer of contemplation, of connection. Really gorgeous. Thank you for that so much. So I'd like to invite our practitioner of the day, Reverend Leslie, to open our service with a prayer.
As we come together here this morning, we give thanks for this glorious day that is unfolding before us, where we have an opportunity to enjoy each other's company, to be good listeners, to express love and compassion, and be able to satisfy that longing of the soul that we all have, that wanting to be closer to that higher power in our lives. For we know, with the participation of everyone here today and the lesson that we hear, that there will be something that will do just that, something that we hear that we can use in our lives. And we are thankful for the time, the talent, and the treasure that is shared by everyone in being able to put on this Sunday morning service. We say thank you to God for all the people in our lives that we so dearly love. And together we say, and so it is. When I was deciding on a quote this morning, and with our topic of facing your anger, I kept running against something, which was if you allowed that emotion of anger to verbally express and have its way, you will give the best speech you ever have given, but you will regret it down the line. Our first quote today comes from Wendy Hammond, who wrote the book Leaving the Castle, which is about rebuilding your self-confidence in your life. And she says, anger is our unconsciousness fastest way to let us know that our boundaries are being stepped on. And the Dalai Lama, anger cannot be overcome by anger. If someone is angry with you and you show anger in return, the result is disaster. On the other hand, if you control your anger and show its opposite, love, compassion, tolerance, and patience, not only will you remain peaceful, but the other person's anger will also diminish. As we go into our time of quiet, let us think about the things that we can do to create peace in our own lives. We now come back to our world of reality. And please join me as I say May's affirmation. Today, I allow myself to feel everything. I know I am grounded in the infinite, loving embrace of the One. I am blessed and grateful for my emotions and feelings because I know there is only one life. That life is God's life. That life is my life now. And so it is.
Thank you, Leslie. And Jesse has some more music for us.
That was a beautiful quote. I mean, the affirmation especially. I love to feel things. Feeling is healing. And the song is called Healing. Can you feel my love? Let it wrap you up in a warm body. It is more than enough that you are simply breathing right now. You bring your highs, you bring your lows. Try to prove this is gonna dissuade me from loving you. And all this darkness is just a feeling, and it's feelings that make you grow. And when you're growing, it means you're healing, making your way to where you let resistance go. And I can show you the way, and I will reassure you that through it all, I'm gonna stay. Won't you let me in? I am standing at your door, waiting. I don't care if it's a mess in there. I just wanna see you shine as you are. And it's a hard road to loving yourself. It's a hard thing to believe it enough to be loved by somebody else. You may be lost, you may be shaken and confused, but none of this is gonna dissuade me from loving you. And all this darkness is just a feeling, and it's feelings that make you grow. When you're growing, it means you're healing, making your way to where you let resistance go. And I can show you the way, and I will reassure you that through it all, I'm gonna stay. I'm gonna stay. And I love you, darling, whether or not you believe that I do. Oh, and I love you, sugar, so open up and receive what I'm giving you. Oh, and all this darkness is just a feeling, and it's feelings that make us grow. When we're growing, it means we're healing, making your way to where you let resistance go. And I can show you the way, and I will reassure you that through it all, I'm gonna stay. I'm gonna stay. Ooh, I'm gonna stay. I'm gonna stay.
Oh my goodness. Jessie, you are just a bright light in the world. That was beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I'm so, so grateful that you have joined our community. So, so lovely. Oh, so let's just breathe that in. That was just delightful. Just delightful. And good morning and welcome to One Heart, One Mind, Center for Spiritual Living's online Sunday service. And today, perfect song for this morning, because today we continue our journey into the inner world, where we have all those feelings that Jessie was singing about. And we're using May's theme of emotions. And our focus is on how to understand and experience our emotions as guideposts, as powerful navigating tools, our inner GPS. Whenever I say that, I think of our old friend Al Neville's. He always talked about the inner GPS. And we use these emotions to help us express the divine life within our own human lives, our daily lives, the ones, our regular walking around daily lives. And it often seems to me that the path we're asked to walk as human beings is that of an explorer. We're constantly trying to discover who we are, why we're here, and why we have the experiences we have. And then to navigate through it all with grace and peace and love and compassion. We're always being called to remember our divine nature and to be true to our spiritual commitment to live from that divine nature and to face the challenges that life presents us with, which is not always an easy task. The outer world sometimes just seems to scream at us to get our attention. And our divine nature asks us to look at that screaming outer world, that noisy outer world, and to remember who we are, to remember that we are these powerful expressions of love, and then to think and to feel and to act accordingly. And, like I said, that's not always easy. Sometimes seems like a very tall order. So today we look at another emotion that pops up for us from time to time, anger, as Reverend Leslie told us. And a couple of weeks ago, we discussed the idea that there really are only two emotions, fear and love. And I think that's the main message of the Course in Miracles, but I think that it's true. However simplistic it may sound, and I really believe that it's true. So from that perspective, anger would become an offshoot of fear. I know I often feel fear as frustration or even helplessness, but fear also bubbles up as anger. And ultimately it boils down to a fear of being out of control, or that we're unable to deal with the uncertainty of some life situation that we're confronted with, or anger can come from an inability to just be with a particular situation or event because it's so uncomfortable. It can, anger gets sparked from an inability, at least mine does, from an inability to really just trust life, and that sparks fear. And I think the term to bubble up is the right one to discuss anger with, because whatever the outside situation or event is that we're responding to, anger does seem to bubble up from within us. The Sufis are practitioners of the mystical arm of Islam called Sufism, and they have a saying. They say that there are two rivers within us, a river of heaven and a river of hell. And that these two rivers converge in the human heart. I love that idea. They come together in the human heart. They say that the heart is the bridge between heaven and hell. And that in the midst of the turbulence created by the convergence of these two rivers, we are asked to be clear and centered and to always remember who we are. We're called to sit in the clarity and the peace and the love of our divine nature, rather than be tossed about by the turbulence. And as I was thinking about this beautiful saying and approach of the Sufis, I realized that here it is. This is the place in the convergence of these two rivers. This is where we begin if we want to explore our own emotions from a solid foundation, a place where heaven exists, a place where we have to be willing to connect with and pull back into that God self, that wise witness self, to be able to pull back from the turbulence and see from the higher view, to see hell, which is the complications and the confusions of the world, from the perspective of heaven, or the calm, peace, and the divine love of our true nature. This is the place where our emotions become valuable tools for personal insight. Here we can use our emotions to help us navigate life. Here, where those two rivers converge, where the inner and the outer worlds come together, is where we can choose to be in the river of heaven, to witness our emotions and to not get tossed about in the turbulence. You know, we all experience anger occasionally, you know, whether we express it inwardly or we keep it inside and try and bury it. Our part, however we experience it, is to process it in a way that's beneficial both to us and to anyone else who may be at the receiving end of our anger. And and Leslie had that great quote. I found the same thing. It's by a guy named Ambrose Pierce or Bierce. I think it's a B. And I ran across it as well, Leslie. It was funny that you said it. Speak when you are angry and you will make the best speech you will ever regret. I love that. If we don't process our anger in positive ways, it will express in unhealthy ways. I know when I get angry, the best thing for me to do is to disengage for a while, just like my daughter sends my little grandson to his room to take a time out before he says something that he will later regret. I need to do the same things, because you know what? Things can quickly spiral out of control. If I just spontaneously react from my anger, from the anger that's bubbling up, rather than calm down and respond from that river of heaven, from that place where I disengage from the turbulence, you know, from when I respond from my connection to the divine presence, to that divine presence of peace within me. That's where I want to go. I don't want to just react and bite. There's a great story about this. It's a story about a monk. Why is it always a story about a monk? I'm not sure. But a monk decided he wanted to meditate alone, away from his monastery. And so he took his boat out to the middle of a lake and he anchored it. And he closed his eyes and he began to meditate. And after a couple of hours of pretty undisturbed silence, he suddenly felt the bump of another boat colliding with his boat. And with his eyes still closed, he sensed his anger rising up. But when he opened his eyes, he saw that it was just an empty boat that had gotten untethered and floated to the middle of the lake. And at that moment, the monk achieved realization, self-realization. And he understood that anger was within him. It merely needed the bump of an external object to provoke him. And now, whenever he comes across someone who irritates him or provokes him to anger, he reminds himself, this is merely an empty boat. The anger is within me. And I love this story. And I honestly think it gives us some really solid practical advice about how to engage with those two converging rivers in our hearts, to disengage from the bump of the outside world, the empty boat, and to the best of our ability, because we're human and we're probably not going to be perfect, but to the best of our ability to see everything from the perspective of heaven, the higher view, from the view of our oneness with the constant and unchanging nature of God from love. And that transformative power of God's love is right within us. That nature is always within us and always available to us. We can pull back from the bump of the outer world and draw ourselves into the oneness with that divine loving presence always within us, always available to us. I'm a big fan, and I know I probably told you this before, of Gary Simmons. He's a unity minister, and he authored a book called The Eye of the Storm. I actually have a copy. I was going to share it. Here's The Eye of the Storm. And he uses, in his book, he uses the metaphor of a hurricane to help us to understand how to navigate our outer and inner worlds. I don't know if you noticed, but it's not EYE of the storm, but just I, capital I. And Simmons says that when we find ourselves in an anger storm, some event or some circumstance in our life, that we can move into the center of the eye of the storm, which is always peaceful and calm. I did my guided meditation about this morning. And that can help us to diffuse the turbulence of the situation. And by focusing on the calm eye in the midst of the anger storm, We take the peace and the calm of the I into the turbulence rather than to let the turbulence disturb the peace and the calm of the I. We can choose where we put our attention. Do we want to put it on the serenity of the blue skies at the center of the storm or the eye of the hurricane rather than get thrown about by the turbulence of the storm? Have you ever seen photos of the eye of a hurricane? It's very calm and very peaceful and serene. And I love that visual of sitting within that peace and calm and serenity of the eye of the storm. And as the turbulence move all around us, but don't disturb us, don't affect us. And the other thing that I love that Simmons the point that he brilliantly makes in his book, another point is that something that Ernest Holmes, our founder, stressed often in his writing and in his talks is that there is no one or nothing that is against us. And that life is actually for us. Nothing is against us. And that the momentum of life moves towards good, towards love. But if you're anything like me, you found yourself trying to reconcile this idea that nothing is against us with the challenges and the problems that we face in our lives. I mean, after all, isn't our world filled with, all you have to do is look around. It's filled with adversaries, people, or situations that push against us, that we feel take advantage of us. We live in a world where spouses, lovers quarrel, parents argue, and children fight, and families feud, and students protest, and nations go to war. How can you tell me that no one's against me? Well, in his book, Simmons asks this powerful question, this I think is powerful, to help us address how we see this statement of nothing is against us. And he asks this question: is it possible that the experience of intimidation, threat, or adversarial relationships arises out of how you are relating to this experience and not how the experience is relating to you? Could it be the way that we are viewing the situation? Think about it. Can you see how the lens through which you are perceiving a person or an event or a situation determines your experience of that event or person or situation? We're creators and meaning makers. That's our nature. We're empowered to witness a situation or a circumstance or an event and engage with what is happening without being disturbed or defined by what is happening. And then we are empowered to use the experience for the highest purpose it can be used for. And I'm not saying that that's easy. It takes commitment and it takes practice. But I'll give you an example. So, some of you know that I've been going through a moment here with one of my children. So the other day I was having a conversation about alcoholism and addiction with someone, and they were saying how sad and disturbing the whole thing is. And I agreed. It is sad. It is sad to bear witness to human suffering, especially when the person is close to you. But there's another way to look at this challenge. What if we look at the entire manifestation of this kind of disease of alcoholism or addiction as a gift? Ooh, I almost bite my tongue as the word comes out of my mouth. But we can look at this as an invitation for the realization of a deeper sense of freedom. What if what's in the way is the way? What if the addiction that the person has experiences is the most effective path for a clear and unwavering belief in their own freedom and loving goodness, their own godness? What if this is the most direct path and opportunity for the advancement of their soul? And I would love to believe that human beings don't have to learn through suffering. And I do believe that we can learn without having to suffer. But what if we are suffering? we can use what we experience as a fast track to where we want to be, to the spiritual truth, to go directly to the heart of the spiritual truth. And as we discover for ourselves that light actually does dispel darkness, and that wholeness actually does vanquish disease, and that love brings us into connection and into joy, what if that is the best way for us to move through a path of suffering? We can, and it has been my experience, that Spirit God uses every human circumstance to reveal the best expression of life when we acknowledge it and allow it to do that. We have to be willing to move into possibility on the other side of discomfort or challenge or whatever it may be. You know, Ernest Holmes says the same thing, only he says it in a slightly different language. One of my favorite quotes, I know I've shared it so many times, but it's so perfect. I even knew what page it was on. I was looking it up to write it down for the talk. I knew exactly it was on page 37 because I've done it so many times. But he wrote this, and really listen to this. In our ignorance of the truth, we have misused the highest power we possess. And so great is this power, so complete is our freedom in it, so absolute the domain of law through it, that our misuse of this power has brought upon us the very conditions from which we suffer. We are bound. Here it is. This is where he really goes in. We are bound because we are first free. The power which appears to bind us is the only power in the universe which can free us. It's the same power. It's how we use it. He's telling us that by having faith in the things we fear or we're angry about, that's what creates them. But that we can consciously participate with the same creative principle that created what we don't want to create what we do want. We're empowered to create what we do want. We can use every experience we encounter to teach us more about our true nature and how we can change our experiences. We're bound because we're first free. And that same power is the only power that can completely free us. Isn't that beautiful? I feel so empowered to co-create and participate with the divine presence of love to shift my life. And Gary Simmons, I guess it's Simons, sorry, really says the same thing. He has the same wisdom. He says it a little bit differently, but it's the same thing. He wrote, if consciousness is in bondage to the past, so consciousness, where we're putting our attention, if either conscious or subjective, if consciousness is in bondage to the past, or if attention is mesmerized according to the ingrained patterns of awareness, the future is simply an extended line from here to tomorrow. And that's what makes the future predictable. And we know, as metaphysicians, that the best way to predict our future is to create it. And if we don't want to create a predictable future based on the past, then we have to change the pattern of our thinking and our feeling and our being. Our wonderful practitioner, Lisa Lazaro, who's on the call, she said this the other day, but I've heard her say it before, says we need a pattern interrupt. And I love that. It really stuck with me when she said it. We interrupt the pattern by changing our thinking and our feeling and our actions. And what I've discovered is that our soul, our being, that the divine wise part of us, moves us towards experiences and challenges that awaken us to our divine nature. And what I've discovered is that I'm not my experiences at all. They happen and they're calling me forward. None of us are our experiences. We are all far greater than any of our experiences. Probably one of the most powerful things we can do to interrupt that old pattern and establish a new pattern is the practice of forgiveness. Every spiritual tradition across the globe, across time, has taught some sort of forgiveness practice as a tool for transformation. And if we're looking for an example of the transformative power of forgiveness, we don't have to look much farther than the story of Nelson Mandela. His story is such a clear example. And as I was looking for forgiveness examples, his just came shining at me. Nelson Mandela walked through a prison gate after 27 years in jail, and he walked through those gates on February 11th in 1990. And he reflected, and I wrote his quote down, and this is the power of forgiveness. As I walked out the door toward my freedom, I knew that if I did not leave all the anger, hatred, and bitterness behind, that I would still be in prison. That's pretty powerful. He knew that it isn't only physical bars that imprison us, but the bars of our patterns of belief, and that we can break them using this transformative power of forgiveness. So, I have to ask, what makes forgiveness so seemingly miraculous? What or where is the power in forgiveness? And I truly believe that the power at the heart of forgiveness is spiritual principle. That sounds kind of stoic almost, spiritual principle, but it isn't. Forgiveness asks us to let go of our personal perceptions of another person or event or situation or circumstance and turn entirely toward unchangeable spiritual principle. We move from fear and all of its relatives into love and all of her relatives. Forgiveness uses spiritual principle to shift our misperceptions. Forgiveness helps us manage the habits or the patterns of perception that we've created from our past experiences and from all of our enculturation. So as an example, when we can't see God at this moment, at this point of our experience, wherever we are and whatever we're doing, and we become fearful, when we see ourselves as separate from others and we become suspicious, when we feel out of control and we don't know what to do, here is where we turn our attention to spiritual principle. Here is where we practice forgiveness. Spiritual principles such as God is here now. God is love. God is within all life. I am one with God. I live in a friendly universe. I live in an intelligent, ordered, and balanced universe. I flow with the divine good of God. We turn towards these principles and all of the other principles that are true within us already. We change our perception of the situation, whatever it is, whether it's something that's just happening to us now or has occurred in the past. Our perception of life is filtered through our belief. So grounding ourselves in spiritual principle establishes this strong and solid foundation for us to stand on when we encounter an experience that challenges what we say we believe. And I'm not one who believes in blind faith. I believe we truly have to experiment with spiritual principle through our spiritual practices every day. We have to prove spiritual principle every day. We can't just take it for granted. And it's through our spiritual practices that we daily experiment and experience spiritual principles expressing in our lives. God is all there is. I stand in the flow of good, whatever principle it is. So this week, I invite you to be aware of, or if you feel anger bubble up for you, and just see it for what it is, fear. And I invite you to challenge your perception of whatever it is that triggers you, whatever empty boat bumps up against you, by aligning with the spiritual principles that you hold. Swim in the river of heaven, relax in the eye of the storm, and daily experiment with spiritual principle through the practice of forgiveness, affirmative prayer, or spiritual mind treatment, sacred service, sacred giving. There's so many great practices and ways in which we can experiment with spiritual principles, to experiment with the natural goodness of life, because that's your birthright. That's who you are. So let's do some prayer. I know that all there is this divine presence, this divine oneness and unity of all life, and that its momentum moves towards love, moves towards the expression of God, of good, of wisdom, of beauty, of harmony, of order, of vitality, of wellness and wholeness, and that we live, move, and have our being within this presence. Everything happens within the activity of this divine life that we are a part of. And so I speak my word for and about each and every person that is present here on this call, and each and every person that is not, that there is an opening, a shift in consciousness that stands in the flow, that says yes to the divine goodness and flow of life. We stand in the river of heaven. We are not altered by the bump of the empty boat, but we stand firm and solid on the knowledge of the spiritual principle that we are one with God, and that God is one with us, and that we are inseparable in every way, and that we are empowered to participate with its goodness, its love, its law, and its life to create joy, to create a spectacular sense of belonging and connection and love. So I'm just so grateful for this. I'm so grateful for this truth that we are one with God, with life, with each other. And I'm so grateful. And in gratitude, we open even wider to receive. And I just let out a breath of conviction and a faith and trust and knowingness in these spiritual principles. And I just allow that to be, knowing that I have done my part, and now I allow God to do God's part. And we relax and signify our agreement by saying together, and so it is. And so it is. People came on. It's so funny, you get into your talk and then you come back and people popped on in the process. So I would like to invite Relaine, wherever you are, to lead us in our time of conscious giving. And I can put up our ways of giving. Hang on, let me find it. It's right here. There we are.
Thank you, Michelle. So there's different ways to give to One Heart, One Mind, and you can do it very easily through Venmo, and that's at One Heart, One Mind Center, or you can mail a check to Treasurer Jim Massopust, and his address is in the chat usually. And it just really feels good to give and to receive. And so it's all really one motion, one movement, one beautiful gesture. And so I know that as we give to One Heart, One Mind, we've already receiving and continue to receive so much of the love that Reverend Michelle is speaking about today. So I'm very grateful for this sacred spiritual practice of giving and receiving. And we have a little affirmation that we can say next. Sacred giving. I recognize that all supply flows from the divine givingness of spirit. My gift is a continuation of this divine flow. I give and receive from this infinite supply, and I give in faith and love and in joy. And it always flows back to me in kind. And so it is.
Thank you, Relaine. And Yvonne's going to give us our announcements, and then we'll come back to you for the benediction, Relaine. And then Jesse's going to take us out with her powerful music, which I love.
Well, let's see. First, I want to just ask you all to join us on Monday evening for our prayer group on Zoom. And it's from 6 to 6:20. And it's a silent prayer that we do as a group focused on one art center. That wasn't going to come out. It's really a great way to spend 20 minutes. Then this Tuesday evening, we're starting a spiritual learning circle from 6 to 7. And we have a new discussion beginning, and the group will be discussing practical application of spiritual economics, and will be facilitated by Reverend Michelle and Practitioner Raylene. And we'll be using the book Spiritual Economics by Eric Butterworth, which is awesome. And it's available on Amazon and Kindle. And Ben, I want to remind you not to forget to watch Reverend Michelle's Spiritual Practice Prosperity video on YouTube. She publishes it on Wednesday and Friday. And the cool thing is you can subscribe on there. It doesn't cost you anything, but you can subscribe, and then it pops up and you don't have to go hunting around looking for it. It's really worth the 10 or 15 minutes to go in there and hear her wonderful spiritual mind treatment and talking about prosperity. And I have the most exciting news. We're still dealing with the unscheduled income. And I have a wonderful story to tell you. And it's kind of a story on myself, but that's okay. I'll live through it. I shop often with Instacart and Walmart. So all I have to do is go on to Instacart and fill out what I want, and they deliver it. So I did that this week. And let me tell you first, I've been doing this since COVID started, not every week, but sometimes. And I've never had them make an error on what I'm getting. Sometimes you can't get what you want, and they'll come on and tell you can't get what you want, but here's a substitute if you want that. So I get this package this week, and the girl that did the shopping was wonderful. You get to talk to them and you kind of get to be friends. And she came to the door and we were being silly with each other. But when she left, I started unpacking stuff, and I found, you'll love this, 2 packages of Haribo peaches. And one was what was peaches, and there were 2 of them, and one was cherry and mango. And it's candy is what it is, little soft candy things. Now and they're all covered with sugar, and you have to understand that I don't eat sugar. I don't eat regular sugar. I'll eat coconut sugar, that stuff, but I don't eat sugar. So then I pull out Monster cherry and pineapple sugar-free popsicles. And I love popsicles. I buy popsicles all the time. And I even have a friend that we'll tell each other when the sugarless ones, the popsicle ones, are in the store, and go get them. So first I was upset. I thought, well, this is stupid. I wonder if I could catch this girl. And I run out to see if she's still out there, and she's not still out there. So I go on Instacart and I look to see how they handle this. And how they handle it is, if it's under a certain amount of money, then you can donate it somewhere, you can use it, just don't take it back to them. So I got $12 worth of unscheduled income because I got these 3 big packages of the popsicles and 2 of candy.
That's pretty cool.
And it finally hit me. I said, oh, this is unscheduled income. This is so exciting. So I had to tell you that if you're not on our unscheduled income road, get on it, because it can be really fun. And I laughed at myself because I was just like cranky, like, oh man. And then it hit me and I was like, oh, and then I ate one of them and they're great. That's my story.
Awesome. Wonderful. Oh, okay. Yay, unexpected income. Let's see, Relaine, you want to give us our benediction, and then Jessie can take us out with our music?
Sure. I just love praying after that fun story. Fun and inspiring story. Thank you, Yvonne. So let's just take a breath together, a collective breath, and just feel the happiness and the joy and the gratitude of communing together this morning. Just a wonderful feeling of connection and unity and love that is just, flowing and streaming in and of and through each and every one of us. And just how it just brings us to a higher and higher level of feeling and being. And it just feels so good to be with each other and, expressing ourselves in the world as human beings and spiritual beings. And so I'm so grateful for the talk today, for the feeling of anger, and from what we learned from that, from love and fear, and how we work through and process the fear and the anger, and just moving us into higher levels of expression, of self-expression, of our wholeness and completeness and our perfection of being, and while we're here on this earth plane. And so I'm so grateful for Reverend Michelle, for Jesse, for every one of you that are here, and for all those that aren't here, because we're all connected. Thank you, God. I release this prayer into divine law, knowing it is already just so beautiful and just so. And so it is.
And so it is. All right, Jesse, take us away.
Beautiful. Sometimes I just get so excited about the serendipity of things. So this song's called "The Heart of Love," and it's basically everything you were talking about in your talk. Sunshine on my face and the day is made of magic. Sometimes I still find a way to make my life seem tragic. Good things are pouring down like rain in a summer storm. I wanna dance, but it's so much better to dance in the storm. Oh, I accept my joy without question, it's a blessing. I accept my pain without question, it's a blessing. I accept my joy without question, it's a blessing. I'm expanding and I'm standing in the heart of love, 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 in the heart of love. Things crumble into chaos and I don't know where to turn next. Feels like I'm a failure, but I know it's all for the best. Good things are coming my way, even if I can't see them yet. And if I open my eyes and trust, I'll see that I've been blessed. Oh, I accept my joy without question, it's a blessing. I accept my pain without question, it's a blessing. I accept my joy without question, it's a blessing. I'm expanding and I'm standing in the heart of love, 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 in the heart of love. I see my blessings and I'm accepting, no hesitation, no reservation. I see my blessings and I'm accepting, no hesitation, no reservation. I see my blessings and I'm accepting, no hesitation, no reservation. I see my blessings and I'm accepting, no hesitation, no reservation. I accept my joy without question, that's it. And I accept my pain without question, it's a blessing. Even my anger, I accept my joy without question, it's a blessing. I'm expanding and I'm standing in the heart of love. I'm expanding and I'm standing in the heart of love. Oh, I'm expanding and I'm standing in the heart of love. 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 Oh, in the heart of love. In the heart of love. In the eye of the hurricane. In the eye of the hurricane. In the middle of the feeling. In the middle of the feeling. At the center of it all. In the heart of love. In the heart of love. Thank you. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your gift with us today, Jesse. Thank you, Relaine, for the beautiful benediction, and Reverend Leslie for the invocation. Thank you all for coming. And hey, Justin, my son's on. I just saw him. And I just want to say that this is our time for just sharing. Our service is pretty much finished, and now I'm just going to ask you,